successful. And then I went back.
Did have some research with Candy years ago.
Okay,
very familiar with her work.
She, for those listeners that aren't familiar with Carla Turner, she is one of the leading people who really broke this topic, you have to say. Going on 20 years ago, is that a little too long for me to say?
Well, Into the Fringe came out about 92, 93, thereabouts. That was their personal family story, which definitely had my lab elements in it. Around that time, Leah, came out public, and a number of other gals. It's really been the women who've been at the forefront of pushing this story out. I have to give my credit to them, because they've really been in the forefront, standing in the gap about this whole issue.
Right, and I will encourage people, by the way, if you're not familiar with Carla Turner's work, she is now deceased, and some people think that she was given a very particularly nasty form of cancer for her work in this field. She used to present at MUFON and speak of evil intentions or bad things that were going on by aliens and humans. But if you go to carlaturner.org, her books are all out of print. They're very expensive to get a hold of usually, but you can read free PDF versions of Taken, Into the Fringe, and Masquerade of Angels, as well as there's a video. I was actually at a conference in Arkansas, the Ozark UFO conference, and a guy was selling a bunch of VHSs. He had a video lecture that's over 2 hours that Dr. Carla Turner performed in between the writing of her 2 books. One of them was just about to come out, and she was finished with it. But I got it from him. We put it on DVD, and now the fellow that runs carlaturner.org has that DVD available for free viewing at carlaturner.org. But you will learn more about the history and the opening of this topic. As James has said, Carla Turner kind of broke the field open and began discussing this and making it credible, because she is a PhD, by the way. So carlaturner.org, I just have to give a plug for it. There's also on livefromroswell.com, there's a link into a paper that James has written. It's up on the bio page right now. I just want to remind folks and welcome you again to livefromroswell.com. My guest right now is James Bartley, who is both an experiencer and, we'll say the word expert, on the topic of military abductions. And Leah Haley will be joining us in the second hour, by the way, so stay tuned for her. And James, what I said originally when I was doing this lecture once, and I broached the topic of my lab, you said it's almost a naive thing now, but the original belief in the UFO community seemed to be that military, black op types, New World Order or whatever, not the boys in blue that we think of, or servicemen, were re-abducting abductees for the purpose of gathering intelligence on the abductors, the non-human entities, by either questioning them, hypnotizing them, examining their bodies, and seeing what technology we could glean. But you're saying that it's a much bigger picture than that the military is actually creating and or using the people that we label as MyLabs now for purposes such as remote viewing, maybe, astral travel, etc. I'll let you continue now.
Yes, the MyLabs are used in two general ways. One is through the physical body. They are sometimes, but not always, but sometimes switched into an alter mode. And I'm even talking not only males here, but females. I mean, the most unassuming, demure housewife you come across,
Leah Haley,
pushing a shopping cart in a supermarket, may be trained as a covert operative, may be able to fly not only human-made aircraft, but even know how to fly alien aircraft, various types of alien craft. It's some of the physical, what I mean by physical, I mean dense physical body. They are trained to do covert operations. They're trained in long-distance running, long-distance swimming, depending on the aptitude of the persons. For example, the MyLab controllers very often encourage these MyLab people to get into certain types of fields, like become EMTs, become firefighters. I don't want to blow the cover of some of you out there, but I know that some of you out there are doing this. They're encouraged to become firefighters, become EMTs, paramedics, things that give them the ability to work in crisis situations. Because I'll elaborate on this more later, because one of the very common themes that recurs amongst MyLabs and abductees in general, but MyLabs in particular, is that they seem to be trained for or prepped for surviving some kind of future cataclysm up on the surface, whether it's all-out warfare, urban unrest, some kind of warfare scenario. Very often, and Leah will probably be able to tell you about this too, very often MyLabs are put in training scenarios where they are supposed to organize, train, and lead a bunch of survivors in a post-apocalyptic scenario.
Oh, wow.
They will be tasked with identifying those who have particular tasks, rather particular aptitudes. Okay, you go out and find water, you go out, and they have to be very pragmatic and almost callous, I don't want to really say callous, but very methodical in their approach.
Right.
There's no room for sentiment or pity. They can't bring along people who the controllers deem as baggage just because they feel sorry for them. They have to organize these survival groups based on the best possible chance of survival. And much of the training, both in the body, astrally and physically, is geared towards this apocalyptic scenario, which the military controllers deem as inevitable. They're frequently warning the MyLabs that they've got under control to be prepared, have your backpacks ready, get your kids prepared, and so on and so forth. So some of the training in the physical realm could be with weapons, it could be medicine, very often it involves scenarios like escape and evasion. There's some unknown aggressive force chasing after them in this scenario. Very often the terrain or the environment will be simulated to look like a war-torn city, and they have to get from one end to another without being caught.
You know what? Because you're coming on this show stating in your own bio that I put up on livefromroswell.com that you're an experiencer. We also have Leah Haley, who is an experiencer of specifically of my lab, not just an abductee. For those that don't know, and I know a lot of the show's audience does know this about me, but that's what got me into this field, because I knew when I was a child I was either an abductee or an experiencer. My autobiographical dreams, memories, etc. are in the book that broke me into this field in '97. It's on the website. Just go back. If you follow livefromroswell.com on the left, there's alienstranger.com, and eventually you'll find the book Come Sail Away, which got me into this. I'm going to say 10 years ago. Spoke up hardly ever. But I thought of that because of what you're saying. One of the dream scenarios, I don't know how to say it correctly, but one of the things that I remembered as a dream from childhood involved a futuristic city that had greys walking around in it with humans, and for some reason water was very, very precious. It was like a sacred object. People revered it, but they weren't quite fighting over it. I don't know how that plays into your scenario. I really just said that to open the fact that, because I know many people in the chat room and listening are abductees, is that if you want to ask a question of our guests, Leah or James, you have an extremely sympathetic audience. You have an extremely sympathetic host. You have a group of people. I mean, we're not playing support group right now, but if you want to talk, again, talk to me at livefromroswell.com. I'll ask the questions for you of James. And what other reasons do you think this is going on? I mean, why? Just getting back to the 101 almost, other than the belief early on that it was just gathering intelligence, why are humans being abducted by human militaries?
They make what I call, to borrow a term from the military, very useful multitask platforms. And not only can they be used in the physical body as a control, as an operative, but getting back to some of the aptitudes, some of the my labs I know are chemists, they're scientists, they're in the biomed field, and it's not unusual to find them in an underground installation in an altered state performing those kinds of tasks, working in a lab, working I know a gal in the Southwest who works in what we probably call a level 5 bio-warfare lab, way deeper than or dangerous than like a level 4 bio-warfare lab. By day, she's just like any other, middle-aged gal, but when they access her and they use her, she's some kind of a scientist in this deep black germ warfare program. I know people that are used in weapons training, covert operations. Sometimes, unfortunately, as similar to the stories you hear from monarch survivors, some MyLab women have been used against their will in pornography films and as sex kittens and what have you, either to blackmail people or whatever the case may be. Because they're not only used individually, they can be bonded up with a person of the opposite sex that they train with for weeks and months and years.
Would it be accurate of me to ask you, since you brought up the sexual element, would it be accurate to say that some of this stuff could, other than the New World and the global military, could spin into things like Masonic sexual abuse or black magic or satanic stuff? How big of an element do you see? Just using the terms generically, and I don't want to offend anybody here, but how big of an element do you see things like Satanism and Masonry and we'll even say just cult religions in general
that element in this? That element does play a part. There are, in my paper, My Lab Operations, I try to describe what I perceive to be the differences between monarch survivors and my labs. And monarchs, they tend to come, some of them, not all, but some come from multi-generational incest families, some with very deep satanic ritual abuse elements.
Define Monarch for me again.
It's this offshoot of the CIA's infamous MK Ultra program, and it is based on trauma-based programming. Apparently, projects like Paperclip, Overcast, and these other intelligence exploitation programs, which brought over a bunch of Nazis, mainly war criminals of one stripe or another, and they brought over this technology, this methodology of trauma-based mind control, which they perfected in the concentration camps, where basically you take a child, ideally, as demented as it sounds, prior to the age of 5, they're subjected to horrendous abuse, sexual and otherwise, and this causes all kinds of compartments to develop in their mind as a safety and survival mechanism. Each compartment can be individually programmed. Well, that is the gist of Monarch programming, is trauma-based mind control, whereas there are a number of MyLabs who have endured childhood sexual abuse or some other type of childhood abuse, but
we're going to have to
not all of them, right? There are many that never endured any of that kind of... The mind control that the MyLabs seem to be subjected to seems to be much more technologically oriented. It seems to be much more advanced.
Okay, James, we're about to go to break right now. Our break lasts about 5 minutes.
Okay.
I do have a question in the queue. Linda's wanting to know, why do you think the UFO community does not really want to talk about this? And we'll probably pick up there when we get back. And also, no, I believe I'm just going to queue up Michael Parker. We're going to break soon, aren't we, Joe?
light up your night with The Kevin Smith Show. Hi, this is Kevin Smith. Join me Monday through Friday right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Hi, this is James Arthur Yanchik, the Black Knight of Talk Radio, inviting you to join me on a road to truth via the path of non-contradiction. Join us each week on Feet to the Fire, a show with the goals of examining a subject matter on its own merits and test how it stands up to the many possibilities found in reality, all without pre-drawn conclusions found in personal bias. No left or right wings here. No pounding the pulpit of ego-driven my way or the highway attitudes. But there are no free passes given either. Answers to questions are important, but equally important is the reasons and methods used to find the answer. The lack of contradiction is the final judge here on Feet to the Fire. Feet. Sunday evenings. How do you listen? Fire. www.feet2fire.com for more information.
Okay, I'm back. Are you still there?
You are listening to the Paranormal Radio Network.
Welcome back. Greetings from sunny Roswell, New Mexico. I am Guy Malone. You are listening to Live from Roswell. It's livefromroswell.com, and you can email me or talk to me at livefromroswell.com at your leisure to ask a question of my guest, James Bartley. What I'm going to tell you, that music that you heard at the end of the last break is my MySpace featured artist of the week, Michael Parker and the Michael Parker Band. We'll be playing a few more songs of his. That was Under the Bodhi Tree. Oh, you are a great guest, according to the chat room, James. But click in and listen to some of Michael Parker's music. It's free to listen to on MySpace, as well as I will be on his show, broadcast from Los Angeles, for beginning at 6 p.m. my time tonight. And while you're on the site, livefromroswell.com, I do have a mailing list to remind you to come back and listen to our show. We will have Leah Haley, who is also an experiencer and an abductee, coming up at the top of the next hour. Right now, our guest is James Bartley. He is both an experiencer or abductee, whichever term you prefer to use, and he is an expert on the subject of military abductions, which it sounds crazy to some, but there's some covert black op, New World Order, Satanist, for all we know, group, or groups, most likely, who are abducting humans for purposes untold, although it's very debatable what and why they're doing. What we were talking about at the last of the break, James and I had a little conversation on the phone. He was going into some of the physical or the paraphysical aspects of these humans that are being treated this way because they have abilities such as astral projection, remote viewing. James, go ahead and pick up with this, and I'm going to encourage the listeners before you do. Remember, don't make me do all the work. Send me a question for James. Talk to me at livefromroswell.com. I'm trying to monitor the chat room, but I'm a man. Multitasking is not what we do best. Go ahead, James. Tell me about the paraphysical aspects and the astral operators.
Well, the people have to remember that these are alien abductees first. So it's not unusual for us to recall being pulled through ceilings, to have had paraphysical experiences just as being abductees. So some of those elements carry over into the MyLab experiences. For example, most abductees go through a period of time when they're having a lot of astral experiences, even against their own will. They can't stop having them. I went through this like in the early 80s when I was in high school. Well,
no lie, I had them when I was a child, too. I remember floating on that ceiling when I'm like 5 years old.
Exactly, and the ETs can trigger this response in humans. Well, the deep black military also has that capability, and I believe that they somehow link it up with their satellite system, whether it's the global positioning system, the Iridium satellite system that was set up several years back, whatever the case may be. The deep black military not only has the means to trigger an out-of-body experience within a MyLab, but they have the means to lock on to the unique electromagnetic signature of a MyLab's astral body and send it anywhere into the world.
That is a fascinating claim.
Either above ground or below ground. And I base this premise on the anecdotal testimony I've received from a number of MyLabs.
Right. I'm not saying I don't believe you. I'm saying that is
what they describe, what they describe is they can be sent. For example, one gal that I'm very close to, she was sent into the tunnels in what we determined was Afghanistan, and she was trying to locate the remnants of the CIA trade, Al-Qaeda, and whoever else was over there. She would be sent into a particular tunnel system, because as you know, the Saudi bin Laden group under the CIA built all those tunnel systems, so they knew exactly where to send this gal. And she would identify them, their location. I believe that her controller also would likely be very psychic, and they probably use some kind of electromechanical or electronic means to boost the psychic link between the MyLab controller and the MyLab astral operator. I call these people astral operators. So the person is able to report back, and very often this is simply by the means of the woman would be laying there in a reclined position in an office in an underground facility, verbally describing what her astral body is seeing. So
she's conscious. If she's well trained anyway?
Well, her consciousness would be elsewhere, but either she's verbally describing what she's seeing with her mouth, or there's some kind of telepathic link between the MyLab controller and the astral operator. We get kind of mixed reports sometimes. But anyway, she would identify, yes, there's a group of people here in this tunnel system, and she'd be worried about being spotted, and then the controller would say, no, don't worry about it, they can't see you. Moments later, there'd be a huge explosion. She wouldn't be affected, she wouldn't feel any shockwave or anything, but all the people in there would be killed. And then she'd be sent to another part of the tunnel system, identify some more people, and then pretty soon, my guess is that through channels they report this intel back, so the source is hidden, and then like strike aircraft with earth-penetrating ordnance is sent over, and they drop this ordnance into the mountain. That's my guess is what happens.
I'll lighten it up a bit, but I'm also being serious. Just on that topic, would you say that through remote viewing, whether it's MyLabs or not, and through our knowledge of the tunnels you were describing, in a quick, stupid way, I want to ask you, do you believe then that our military could have Osama bin Laden if they really, really wanted him, or is what we think of as our military a little too removed from the MyLab and the Black Ops for that to be possible? Or probable?
As you know, there is an invisible government and an invisible military that has a pervasive amount of control, and they can manipulate what I call the surface-level military, the surface-level government, to pretty much do their bidding, and the people that are doing the bidding really don't even know where their orders come from. Having been in a military environment in the past, you know, no knock against military people in general, but most of these people are conformists. They basically do what they're told. They don't really, a lot of them aren't what you would call free thinkers or independent thinkers, so they're not going to question where an order came from, and that's one of the things that many MyLabs have deep moral qualms about. They worry if they've been used to commit atrocities. Another example of this astral operator capability is another female MyLab I know was sent over what appeared to be a village in the Middle East, perhaps Iraq or some other place, and her field of vision, there were grid lines, there were like red-colored grid lines, and there was a coded designation for each particular square grid, and she was able to adjust fire the way that a forward artillery observer would adjust fire. Based on where ordnance was falling, she would say, no, it's on like L5 or whatever. And then, once again, the intel will be passed through channels, and whoever is firing the artillery or launching the rockets or whatever, they adjust the fire accordingly, and then it lands exactly where this woman is looking down in her astral body, and in her field of vision, like I said, is this grid set up, and she's able to control fire that way. So a lot of my labs that I speak to are very troubled by this, because that's only what they remember. There's no telling what they've been made to do in a completely altered state of consciousness. Now, on the other hand, I hate to say it, but it's true, there are some MyLabs, and usually these are male MyLabs, that are pretty proud of what they do. They're proud of the fact that they're used as assassins. They're proud of the fact that, they're trained by the Navy SEALs or some Special Forces units, and that's a very common scenario described by male and female MyLabs, that they're trained by what appear to be deep black elements of the U.S. Special Operations community. They're trained in weapons, in all kinds of different techniques. So there is a moral dimension to this also.
That's what I was going to ask you very quickly. Pardon my interrupting again. But would you say that this is, just the MyLab, the human abductees, is really seriously, as I'm sure Carla Turner and most of us would default to thinking, is this a human rights issue? Or based on your years of studying this out, do you almost look at it as more of a necessary evil?
No. Now, I've spoken to many abductees, and they said, you know what, if they would just ask me, now I'm sure they wouldn't willingly want to go out and commit an atrocity, but if they would like to be in the loop, they don't like to be just, utilized as an automaton. And, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, they don't want to be used.
Yes, and it very much is a human rights issue, because if we're abductees to begin with, then these are our latent abilities. But the problem is, these deep black military controllers and the ET groups themselves have detuned us from being able to access this innate knowledge and these innate abilities. And I think that's for control purposes. They don't want all these characters like in the hero show, popping up all over the place doing all this stuff. Yeah. They want to use them as an operational asset. And the thing about it is, very often these MyLabs are kept in really impoverished conditions. By night they're used as this super warrior, and by day they're back at the drudgery type job, eking out a subsistence living, trying to get by day to day. They get no help from the controllers. Once in a while they'll intervene, here and there and do certain things for them, but usually it's they're treated like the redheaded stepchildren.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. That's already been said in the chat room, that abductees in general, through the UFO community, are the unwanted step cousins already. But back to, you mentioned the TV show Heroes, and you said something earlier about the genetic markers and stuff like that. Here's something I'd like you to comment on, because I think it's a point of contention, actually. You're saying that alien inbreeding or DNA stuff is producing people with latent tendencies towards astral projection and all kinds of useful skills. Another point of view, someone might argue, is that that's just human tendencies and untapped human abilities that we all have, just because we're created that way. But I'm sure the answer is somewhere in the middle, that the extra or the non-human involvement may bring them out a little more.
Well, the latter argument presupposes that we're a brand new model, that way out here in the fringes of the Milky Way, humanity just was spontaneously created, that there was never any means or methodology used to bring us here. There have been many reports over the years of beings that look exactly, indeed perfectly, more perfectly human. And I think it's the other way around. It's these aliens don't look human, we probably look like them. Because that spaceship they alighted from could be 10,000 or 1,000,000 years old, okay? Who knows how long they've been around? The question is, how long have we been here, and how did we get here?
Do you mind sharing? What is your worldview, your theological? Do you have a label, whether it's creationism or Christian or agnostic? Do you mind sharing what worldview you come from?
Well, it's kind of evolved over the years.
Yeah, that's a loaded question, I know.
My faith has been sorely tested over the years. I've been severely disillusioned. I was one of those brainwashed, people back in the 80s. I voted for George the Elder twice. Let's go down to Central America and wipe out all the commies, because I didn't know any better. That's what I was taught. That's what the foundation-controlled schools taught me. That's what my ignorant teachers taught me. That's what my ignorant family taught me. So when I realized all that was a sham, that was very disillusioning. And then when I went through a period of harassment in '93, and that wasn't the last time I got harassed, but that was the first time I got harassed, that was very disillusioning too. And Leah Haley, your guest in the second hour, she was a real saint for me back when I first got to know her in '93, because she sat down with me and she listened to me kind of pour out my soul about the harassment and the kind of miseries I was going through at the time, because she'd gone through it. She understood. So to make a long story short, I would probably say that I consider myself a Christian, although my beliefs with Christianity may seem mutually exclusive to some. I believe implicitly in reincarnation, but there are those who say, well, that's satanic. You can't be a Christian and believe in that. Okay, but I believe that even the ETs seem to know what our past lives were. If the bonding of human abductees and the alien love bite, for example, Eve Lorgan talks about this,
work, right,
is any indication, this is a very common sentiment expressed amongst people who have been bonded together, is that they either remember or they believe they had past karma together. I know this. I met this one gal at a conference back in '93 who told me that the military had debriefed her, interrogated her, but they wanted to know about her previous life, which is very interesting. Now, to elaborate on that point, I don't want to go on this whole long tangent about reincarnation, but a number of the MyLabs I know are what I can call quick turnarounds. They remember in detail lives they had prior to and during World War II. Sometimes they were on the Nazi side. Sometimes they were on, very often they were involved in espionage or something like that. And I was thinking to myself, what a great, I wouldn't say great, but what a thing to prepare you for what's going to happen now. Because here we are, everything is coming to a head. The New World Order is knocking on the door. Well, if one doesn't have a form of spirituality at this point, I encourage them to get it, because it's going to take more than our efforts down here. There has to be, and there is, a spiritual component to this. And like I said, my faith has been really tested over. A dear friend of mine, who was in my lab also, died, within the last year. She believes that, well, it seems like the military had worked her over, but then it's an open question whether it was the military or it was reptilians that were working her over. But the end result was it already weakened her heart, and she had a heart attack and died. That's the gal that I dedicated the paper to, my lab paper at the very end of it. So I've had to deal with these issues.
Just coming on email. Just questions coming on email. I will get back, because the conferences and the websites that I run are, one would say, religious in nature, but self-disclosure-wise, I'm a Christian, but I wasn't brought up that way. It wasn't a government-controlled school or handlers thing. I'm a Christian only because Jesus spoke to me, and I've followed him ever since. My life and my ways don't always match with normal Christianity either, so I'm more than sympathetic to what you're saying. I just, for the sake of earlier, I wanted to know what worldview you were coming from. And Leah is the same way. Her faith has been sorely tested. She got basically the left foot of fellowship from every church she was affiliated with when she started asking questions about the aliens and the abductions. But folks, we've dealt with that amazingly at ancientofdays.net. We brought in some of the world's best-known ufologists, as well as some of the world's not-so-well-known Christian theologians who are all about the UFO issue. So check out ancientofdays.net. It is linked from the home Facebook page of Live from Roswell. Here's a question from a guest. Tony wants to know of you, James. His question that he typed is, as an experiencer and having spoken with others, what number of experiencers do you think, James, are used unknowingly in these black operations? How many experiencers are used as MyLabs? 10, 20, 30%, 2%?
Well, just myself, knowing the people I do, I know easily probably getting on 20 or more, and that's just who I know. And I don't go out of my way to meet a lot of people.
You know 20 people?
That's just me. That's just who I know.
Yeah.
That's probably an underestimation. So there's certain types.
We don't all talk about it.
There's certain types of aliens who show up more in these MyLab experiences. It's not unusual for someone who's had reptilian encounters for much of their life to have had also this MyLab element in their life. I think part of the reason for that is long before David Icke arrived on the scene, there was a lot of people who already knew about the reptilian hybridization program. I mean, this is not going to sound very popular amongst some abductees, but abductees, I believe, are hybrids. I mean, I'm not saying this in an elitist sense, but we're not like everybody else. It's harder to manipulate us and fool us. The simple kinds of methodology used on the mass public doesn't really work on us. For some reason, we're more resistant to that. There's a stubbornness about us, a durability about some of us. Attrition takes hold, and some of us die over the years for one reason or another, harassment, whatever the case may be. But I think that the latent paraphysical abilities, the spiritual connection that some of us have, kind of makes us different. It makes us more likely to endure, I believe, hardships that are just around the corner. So I don't see this. They have a phrase in military survival school that you're in the problem. Well, for those of you that are out there having these MyLab experiences, I think it gives you a leg up. I'm not whitewashing or marginalizing whatever hardships or tragedy that you may have encountered on your journey, but compared to your neighbors down the street, you have a more likelihood of surviving the cataclysms that are definitely on the way. I don't want to sound alarmist, but
we've discussed human rights. I do have a question for you from a listener. While we've discussed human rights, and you cannot agree that this is a necessary evil, what you're saying, almost in a light, not whitewashing it way, is whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, huh?
Well, you have to be a pragmatist about it. It's like, do people want to be utilized in this fashion and used and many times discarded? Of course not. Okay,
that's the question that I'm going to end with, because we're down to 2 minutes, and I will bring you back for the next half hour. We're going to give you at least a half an hour, and then we're going to try to have you both on at once to take questions in seconds. And again, email me, people, at talktome@livefromroswell.com so that I can ask questions of James, because you know how quickly the chat window moves. You ask a great question, and then it's a mile up on the thing, and I've forgotten what your question was, but here's a good one. James, what are your suggestions as to how an experiencer can attempt to take greater control over the abduction situation, whether alien or MyLab or both, or physical or astral? And folks, the music will start, and that's when you'll know James is done talking for a little while. We'll have him back. How can someone take greater control over this situation if they do not welcome it?
Remove unwelcome distractions in your life, any self-destructive behaviors, substance abuse, destructive, negative relationships. You need to be able to find an inner serenity. No matter what's going on around you, you need to be able to think clearly and make rational decisions and not make emotionally charged decisions. And I really think that if we control our environment, control the nature of the relationships, and not get involved with negative or type of people, because the negative ETs will strive to put every negative person in your life. As strange as that sounds, it's true. And before I leave this segment, I would like to point out that I am an advocate of human freedom. I'm as outraged about this as anybody else. However, You have to be a realist. If you're stuck in the problem, you have to make the best out of it. You can't sit and you can't whine about it. You've got to make the best of your situation. My experience is that women tend to handle this a lot better than males. I don't know why that is, but it's the truth. So I think women may have better coping mechanisms than men. They're more likely to talk about it amongst other MyLabs, whereas males tend to kind of keep it all inside. So I think talking about it amongst other like-minded, sympathetic people is a definite bonus for you. And thank you for coming on. I don't characterize myself as an expert guy. Thank you for that.
I have a brother.
The only reason I know as much as I do is because a lot of people do so with me. And heroin's not me.
Thank you very much. This is on with
Okay, so a lot of clearly, yeah?
Oh yeah, you're so amazing.
Shot for cocaine, hot rod, porno, videos, show internet, web, clue to the views and romance, give a bad secrets, it'll give us sad. My side. Nothing success, like success. Nothing succeeds, like success. Nothing makes success, like success. Nothing succeeds, like success. House for house, pound for pound, gram for gram, I don't give a damn. Psychotic console, quiet, look the prize, different wise, different time and exercise, athletic, anorexic, another diuretic, narcotic, symbiotic, coded in the alcoholic. Girl, kids and television, armor, graduation, inhibition, politicians, high efficient, statistician, cooking, cotton, legal jobs, military, loves, like culture, navigating, getting,
We have to stop talking. We're coming through on the air.
The whole time?
Light up your night with the Kevin Smith Show. Hi, this is Kevin Smith. Join me Monday through Friday right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Hi, this is James Arthur Yanchik, the Black Knight of Talk Radio, inviting you to join me on the road to truth via the path of non-contradiction. Join us each week on Feet to the Fire, a show with the goals of examining a subject matter on its own merits and test how it stands up to the many possibilities found in reality, all without pre-drawn conclusions found in personal bias. No left or right wings here. No pounding the pulpit of ego-driven my way or the highway attitudes. But there are no free passes given either. Answers to questions are important, but equally important is the reasons and methods used to find the answer. The lack of contradiction is the final judge here on Feet to the Fire. Sunday evenings. How do you listen? www.feet2fire.com for more information.
You are listening to the Paranormal Radio Network.
Good morning, Vietnam. This is Guy Malone. You are listening to Live from Roswell.com. I have just finished the first hour with a truly fascinating guest, James Bartley. You can read his paper on military abductions, linked directly from Live from Roswell. We are coming back now with Leah Haley. She is an author of a couple of good books, Lost Was the Key and Unlocking Alien Closets. She has many more books, for that matter, that are currently linked from livefromroswell.com. Her and her husband, Mark Davenport, own their own publishing company, so they can publish what they want without fear of censors or anybody telling them what they can and cannot say. I'll remind you that you were listening to, if you were here for the first hour, the last show was Michael Parker, and his direct link for MySpace is on my page, and I will be on his show later tonight in California. It is also internet radio. And for those of you who have heard Leah and I's conversation, you know I'm totally faking it when I say, hi, Leah, welcome to the show.
Hi, Guy.
Lovely to have you on, dear.
It's good to talk to you again, too.
Oh, you too. We should do this more often, like off the air or not. I don't care. You know what? Since you didn't respond no, just to lighten things up a bit while we can, if it's even possible to with this subject, is Leah Haley. She has spoken here in Roswell, and there's a DVD cover on livefromroswell.com where you can actually get her entire lecture. She is both an experiencer of abductions by non-human entities and an experiencer and researcher of the military aspect of abductions. And but beyond all that, she's also the lady in this field that every young single ufologist has his eye on. She's just the obligatory crush in ufology. Is that a nice thing to say, or should I not have said that, Leah?
Well, as long as I don't really have to pay you the money I gave you to say it.
Okay, that's cool. Is it true that John Greenwald proposed to you once?
John Greenwald. Well, not that I recall, but...
I totally made that up. I'm just trying to lighten this
I
up.
think that every single woman on the planet wishes that he would propose to them.
Yeah, he's going really steady with this one girl for quite some time, isn't he?
Well, I haven't kept up with it lately, really.
Okay.
Really. I respect his work. What can I say?
Oh, yeah, he's awesome. He's going to be on our show one day.
Work. Yeah.
He is going to be on our show one day, and he is also going to be speaking in Roswell again this summer. Folks, I'll give a quick plug for RoswellUFOFestival.com. I just began redesigning the site this weekend, so there's not much there except some really impressive graphics and a mailing list that you can join to get on our mailing list for RoswellUFOFestival.com. Leah, I'm going to ask you a similar question to what I asked James when he came on, just because we have new listeners that weren't here the first hour. I use the term MILABs is our topic today, MILABS. Would you define that for us, please?
Military abductees. Military abductions. It's people who have had abduction experiences by military personnel, who have been kidnapped by military personnel. That's how I define it. Hello? Guy? I think we've been cut off. I think we just got cut off. Hello?
Did we really go to the moon? Did we really land on the moon? Why weren't there any stars? Did we really go to the moon? Did we really land on the moon?
So, totally my bad. We are back. I was messing around trying to plug in my cell phone and to keep this thing going, and I hung up on you. Totally my bad. So, Leah, define military. No, I know you already did it. I heard that.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, tell me some of the reasons that you think this is going on. Why are humans being abducted by human militaries?
I wish I could answer that question definitively. All I can do is just give best guesses based on my own experiences. They're doing. The ones who have abducted me have been conducting mind control experiments. I don't know why me or what their end agenda is. I just know that there are many people who have been abducted without their consent by...
Definitely.
Yeah. I call I've started calling the abductors CHOPS, CHOPS, or Covert Human Experimentation Operatives. And I don't know what their end agenda is, but way too many people are being subjected to mind control experiments. And I found out in my research that this has been going on for a long time.
Right.
The CIA released some documents, and anybody can get them now through the Freedom of Information Act, but they released nearly 20,000 pages of documents on mind control experiments that they themselves have conducted. Unfortunately, the situation hasn't just been an aspect of the CIA, but there have been some renegade groups that have broken off and have been conducting their own mind control experiments, and I've come into contact with those.
Your personal experience has to do with, first you began to believe that you were experiencing some sort of non-human abductions, correct?
That is true. That was my belief originally. I started having flashbacks of having abductions by aliens, by non-human entities at first. And that's what at that point in time when I wrote Lost was the Key, that's what I really thought they were. All of the experiences, non-human abductions. But the more that I've remembered and the more research I've done, now looking back at some of those and rereading what I wrote about the experiences, I think, why in the world did I think that was an alien encounter? There's not anything alien about that,
Are you talking uniforms and et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, there were some. There were some military people in uniforms that really were human military personnel, but I saw some aliens in uniform too, or at least I thought they were aliens at first. But they looked perfectly human. It's just that I was brainwashed into believing that those things were aliens when they really weren't. Some of them looked, no more alien than anybody else, and yet I was made to believe that that's exactly what they were.
So your first book details what you believed were your alien encounters. By the time you do Unlocking Alien Closets, you believe a little differently then.
Yeah, I believe now at the present time and through the writing of Unlocking Alien Closets, I believe that many of my experiences that I wrote about in Lost was the Key really were mind control experiments conducted by humans. Now, I'm not saying that I don't believe in the existence of aliens or that real aliens, don't exist. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that most of mine have been mind control experiments. Maybe all of them. I don't have that answer yet.
Okay. I remember, because I know this about your personal history, James and I discussed a little bit at the end of the show. I asked him, he said something that prompted me to ask him, what is his worldview? Where does he come from when he's approaching life, the universe, and everything? We got a little into religion without being, I don't think, offensive towards one another, because we didn't really disagree. We're similar the same, but one of the things that I think is interesting about your story is that when you first started having these experiences, you were attending a Baptist church, and you at least asked them for some sort of, I'll let you tell the story, but you went to them asking for help or answers. Is that correct? And can you elaborate on what your experience with your church was?
Yeah, my pastor of the Baptist church that I attended did not believe that non-human entities existed.
Human angels or devils? Come on.
Yeah, I know. Well, aliens.
Okay.
Okay, aliens. He didn't.
I use the word non-human entities all the time. It is my preferred word for this phenomenon because who knows what's going on? You know, I don't want to pretend I've got the final answer.
Right.
But
Well,
how did he treat you?
Okay. Here's the deal. Though. See, this is one of the problems that I see out there is that these things that have traditionally been called aliens, that I agree with you, non-human entities. I agree with you wholeheartedly, totally. But one of the problems I see out there in the religious organizations is that the leaders don't see these things that we're calling aliens as the non-human type entities that you and I are calling them. Like right now, I see them as angels and demons now. But I think that the pastor of that First Baptist church that I attended just, didn't understand that my viewpoint, which is that they're the same.
Well, you may not have understood it at the time either. You probably more than likely thought this was aliens.
Yeah, at the time, I thought that they were extraterrestrial, biological entities.
Problem. Right.
Yeah, and I called them aliens, and that stuck, and I still tend to do it, even though that's not what I really believe they are anymore. But
so how did he treat you?
I was really. People thought I was crazy, but then I thought I was crazy myself at the time.
But you got tested. You weren't.
If all of this is true,
I have gone
and the
through
evidence
it,
strongly
just
suggests that it is,
psychological.
then our government, for some reason, is taking a stance that the general public must not be told the truth.
Being shown that, well, it came out that I had no neuroses or psychoses, but I did suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, which I still suffer from. I still get more agitated than a normal person would. They're not crazy, according to the authorities. So.
Well, it's a favorite phrase of mine, and I don't remember who else I've heard say almost the exact same thing, is that if you're an alien abductee or if you're dealing with paranormal entities, the answer to that dilemma is not that you are crazy, but the experience can tend to drive you there,
It has driven many people to the point that they're no longer able to work. The mind control experiments have. I know many mind control subjects who are totally unable to function in society now.
Unable to?
Unable to.
Okay, now
they're brainwashed into believing that they're unable to function.
Okay, yeah. Now, is that a mind control thing, or is that
yes, it's a mind control thing.
Okay.
It's a mind control thing. One of the tactics of the controllers is to keep the subject in such a state. Well, it's hard to describe the state, but a state of really feeling inferior and incapable. I went through that for a long time, where I just felt that I wasn't capable of working. I wasn't capable of succeeding in life. I wasn't capable of feeling good. I wasn't capable of having energy. For many years, I went through that.
I will say, every time I've ever met or talked with Leah, she's vibrant, alive, full of light, life, and love. And interestingly, one of the last questions from the last hour, James was asked, if a person wants to take greater control of the situation, like they don't want to consent to this situation, what must they do? He talked a lot about removing negative people and negative habits from your life, as well as a spiritual peace and strength. What's the You want to elaborate a little on that one?
That's true, because I was just wallowing in negativity for a long time. You know, I somehow managed to fool a lot of people into thinking that I was doing a hell of a lot better than I really was. You know, in like all of those characteristics that you just gave of me a few minutes ago of what your impression was and, you know, how you thought I was doing, that's exactly opposite of the way I felt that I was and felt that I was doing, because, you know, I really felt like a nobody, nothing, you know, worthless and incapable for years and years and years. Felt like I couldn't work, couldn't get a job. Now, there were...
Now, by training, I mean, you've got a couple of master's degrees, you're a CPA, and you're saying this situation drove you to the point of being practically afraid to leave the house.
Right, because I really believed that it would do no good. Now, another part of that, though, was there was a period of time that I kept trying to get jobs and kept trying and couldn't even get a job. I also know now that part of that was because the mind controllers were sabotaging my efforts. And you see, they were sabotaging my efforts. I couldn't get any. I found out later that none of my resumes I was sending were getting to where I was sending them.
You're saying there's a level of control that a lady in a small town in Tennessee, very near my hometown, by the way, would go apply as a secretary or an accountant, and there's enough control over this issue, at least in your life, because you were a target, that they could screw with you that bad that private companies would not even get your resume or talk to you?
That's exactly correct.
Wow.
See, it took me a long time to figure out what was going on.
But you're
I
not
was
paranoid.
sending out the resumes. I was sending the resumes out the traditional ways, you know.
That
I was
sounds
sending
paranoid. Come on, Leah.
Oh, it does sound paranoid.
But just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you, right?
That is right. But I sent them through the mail. I sent them through email. You know, let me tell you this. A lot of people don't know this because this just happened not only a few years ago. I sent them through email and through mail and through the fax machine. And I never got I wouldn't get responses. Okay, that was one of the things that made me feel like I was incapable and never was going to be able to succeed in life. Okay?
Of course.
Well, this went on for a long time, like years. And finally, I thought, what if those mind controllers are sabotaging my efforts of getting a job? What if they are? And I thought, exactly what you said just a minute ago. Well, come on, Leah, you're paranoid. You know, I told myself that that's what the problem was. So I had to go to an accounting seminar I have to take continuing education credits every year to keep my license current. So I went to an accounting seminar, and I thought, I'll just test the situation. And I took a list of phone numbers with me, of places that might be a good place for me to apply for an accounting job, CPA firms, okay? I took a list with me. I'd gotten them out of the yellow pages. And while I was at the seminar, I used a payphone to call some of these companies to see if they could, if they needed any help. Okay? I got 2 interviews immediately that day.
Because you weren't calling from your number?
I was not calling from my number.
Wow.
I got half a dozen people who called me back and wanting me to come in for an interview.
Based on your resume.
Based on my resume.
I've got to remind listeners, we're on livefromroswell.com. My guest is Leah Haley. She's both an abductee and an experiencer of military abductions. And I think we're lucky in the sense because Linda in the chat room has said that she may be quoting you wrong, and you can clarify that normally you will not even talk to people until after they've read your books because the topic, I guess, is just too crazy to have a conversation on. So you people that are on here are very lucky to be hearing from this lady right now. Is that true that you don't like to talk to people until they've read your material or heard your lecture?
Well, kind of, sort of. There's a reason for that, and it's just, The problem is, Guy, that there are so many people trying to get in contact with me to ask me questions. I just physically can't handle the volume.
I see what you mean.
And,
I get that a lot.
Yeah.
You've already said it. It's in print. You can't say it 10 times a day.
Right. I just can't. I get so many phone calls and so much correspondence now that it just totally overwhelms me. You know, I can't deal with it. I answered an email yesterday that I got in September, and I mean really even more behind than that.
I know the feeling. Yeah.
I just stay behind, and so the reason I asked them to read my books instead is because practically nothing has happened to me after I published Unlocking Alien Closets. Now, I figured a lot out, and I've written a 2-page summary. In fact, I sent you this 2-page summary of what I figured out after Unlocking Alien Closets was published. But between those 2 books, it gives practically everything that's happened to me. I really don't have anything to add to those books.
Right.
And I've been accused so many times.
But you're not a snob. You're not a snob. You're just like, you're called to survive this experience. You're not necessarily called to be the question and answer lady. You're not called to like ministering in the realm per se. You're just called to survive this right now, huh?
Right, and I don't mind talking to people. I wish. Here's what I wish, Guy. I wish that I were rich enough that I didn't have to work and had plenty of time, that I could help people.
Sure, none of us are getting grants for this.
Right. I wish I could help all these people deal with their experiences and answer the question. It's just not feasibly possible for me to do it. But one of the big debunking things that I've been, I've been really under the fire from debunkers throughout the years too. And one of the major debunking things that I've been accused of is, well, you just wrote your book so that you could get rich and make gobs of money. Which, that's a joke, but people who don't know any better, that's what they think. But I was going somewhere with that, and I don't even remember where it was. Here it is. I remember now. The thing is, public libraries still exist, and people who can't afford to buy the books or they don't want to buy the books, they don't have to. They can go to the library and check them out. And
I put mine on the internet for free before I ever even had a hard copy.
Yeah.
We're a couple minutes away from the break. Do you know James well enough to do the show with him, if I can get all 3 of us on the phone at the same time?
James Bartley?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know him very well. I met him in 1993.
Yeah, he spoke highly of you, of having met you. Folks, we're 2 minutes away from break. My email, and if you would like to ask a question of our guests, James or Leah, we're going to try, me and technical issues.
Yeah, and Mark's here too. He's sitting right beside me in case anybody has a question he might.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what? Let's start the show. Let's start the next half hour with a quick howdy from Mark and of his work, and then we will have you and James hopefully on at the same time. Folks, email me at talktome@livefromroswell.com so that I can post your questions to Leah. I'm doing my best to keep up with the chat room, but like I said, men climb mountains, they take over countries, they slay dragons, and they rescue damsels in distress and win their hearts. Multitasking is not our primary thing, though. So watching the chat room is a little tough for me. I want your questions, but please help me stay organized. And just go ahead and email it to me, because I know I've got some brilliant listeners out there with some brilliant questions, and your input is invaluable. Leah, thanks for coming on, and believe me, we're not leaving. I know we're going to go to a commercial here in just a second. It's about 5 minutes, folks. You'll be listening to the Michael Parker Band when we exit. And this next song is not G-rated, is what Joe wanted me to tell you. Hey, I wanted to hear the song New Mexico, Joe, so let's get that back in its entirety when we end the show.
How things could have been, how they are, and they're ahead. Everything is wrong.
Light up your night with the Kevin Smith Show. Hi, this is Kevin Smith. Join me Monday through Friday right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Hi, this is James Arthur Yanchik, the Black Knight of Talk Radio, inviting you to join me on a road to truth via the path of non-contradiction. Join us each week on Feet to the Fire, a show with the goals of examining a subject matter on its own merits and test how it stands up to the many possibilities found in reality, all without pre-drawn conclusions found in personal bias. No left or right wings here. No pounding the pulpit of ego-driven my way or the highway attitudes. But there are no free passes given either. Answers to questions are important, but equally important is the reasons and methods used to find the answer. The lack of contradiction is the final judge here on Feet to the Fire. Sunday evenings. How do you listen? www.feet2fire.com for more information.
You are listening to the Paranormal Radio Network.
July 8th,
Welcome back to Live from Roswell.com. I am your host, Guy Malone. I have two fantastic guests here. James, are you also with us right now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Leah, you are still with us, right?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, James, just chime in, or Joe, let me know what we need to do. We are discussing the topic of MyLabs, military abductions, with the lovely and talented Leah Haley right now. She's both an experiencer of abduction by non-human entities and an experiencer of abduction by human entities that we would loosely call military, but not the military that we allegedly know and love right now. Leah, I've got a one-on-one question that was brought up in the chat room while you were speaking on your worldview. Are you actually saying that you've already stated it's not that you don't believe aliens don't exist, but at minimum, are your experiences more what we'd call paranormal or angelic demonic, or are they all human for that matter?
Yeah, I don't have the question answered myself.
Okay. That's the best answer right there. We don't have to get people fighting with us or debating over that.
Okay.
I do have a question right there. James is here. James, go ahead and say something again.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Hello?
I can hear you. The chat room will let me know if they can. This is great. We've got all three of us on. I'm going to ask you both the same question then, and hopefully I'll be able to hear your answer as well, James, because I can't hear you over the phone, only when I turn up the speaker. The question, we'll address it to you, Leah, first. A lot of experience, and thanks, Tony, a lot of experiencers find they start to have health issues after they start speaking out, especially those that have had reptilian experience. And that is an expertise of James's, by the way. Have either of your guests had this problem other than the mental stress that we all deal with? Leah first.
My platelet cells were killed. Something happened to my body that destroyed the cells that produce platelets. And I was put under practically every kind of test. Well, I was put under every kind of test that doctors have known about to try to find out what caused that situation. And they ruled out all of the normal things that would kill a person's platelet cells, and my doctor concluded that it must have been either poison or radiation that killed my cells.
Your platelets, and what do they do? What do platelets do?
Platelets are what makes your blood clot.
Okay, like when you have a wound.
Yeah.
Keep you from bleeding to death.
Right, so
That ability has been taken away from you?
That ability has been taken away from me. We discovered the problem in January 1996. The reason I know...
And your book was published when?
My book was published my first one was published in April of 1993. We discovered the problem in January 1996 as my health had been failing, and my husband Mark insisted that I go to the doctor for a checkup because my best friend, Carla Turner, had just died. She died January 9th, 1996. And so Mark Davenport, my husband, insisted that I go get checked out to see if there was anything.
Yeah.
And so I did, because I'd been having health problems too. But that's when the doctors discovered that my platelet cells had been destroyed.
And James, I'm going to turn up the speaker so that I can hear you. Hopefully I'll hear you. Have you experienced health problems after you started speaking out?
Well, I developed severe asthma. As a matter of fact, I had to go to the emergency ward last month and had to spend 3 days in the hospital. Developed pneumonia as a result. And my asthma and pneumonia and bronchitis, these things have kind of plagued me over the last several years. A general fatigue that I have to consciously fight off. But what's gone on with me, I have to say, is mild compared to others I know. I know some of my labs who come down with what seems to be brain cancer, other people that have come down with severe kinds of autoimmune disorders. So I really can't compare what's happened to me compared to others, especially to Leah. So it's just not unusual for people that have these kinds of experiences. And when you think about the incessant kind of medical experimentation they're subjected to, the kinds of unusual energy fields they're perhaps subjected to, excuse me, it's not unusual.
Leah, can you hear James, by the way? Is this totally interactive?
I did not hear anything he said.
Okay, this is not as totally interactive as I was hoping for. James has already had a full hour with us, and just because of the way I have to run back and forth and turn up speakers and turn off Leah, James, thanks for answering that question. We might have you on again, and you and I don't know if you travel or not, but we might have to talk about you coming to Roswell sometime.
Yeah, I said hi,
a lot of research
and
cultic elements.
James, Leah absolutely says hi.
Oh, hi, Leah. Talk to you later. Bye.
He says hi back to you, and he'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Thank you for coming, James. Thanks for trying.
Oh,
This
sure.
is our fourth show. We are going to be so technically fantastic within a week or a month. Next week, God willing, and the creek don't rise, and another hurricane doesn't hit New Orleans, we'll actually have a 1-800 number. Joe has already given me the 800 number. It is operational on some of his other shows. It's just not here for today. But yeah, here's a question for you from email. It comes from Treese. You may know her. She was at Ancient of Days at the same time you were. He says that, that would be a question for James, Treese. Okay, Leah, let's see how you handle it.
Okay.
In his essays, he reports negative dreamscape intervention by the entities. He references the aliens were reptilians. His question, the question that was really for him that I'm going to send to you, how would you combat negative dream intervention? Lucid dreaming or another technique? And if you don't feel qualified to answer that question, we all know you're smart. You don't have to.
Okay, yeah, I don't know how to answer that question, really.
Okay, here's an easy question for you. You were in Tennessee last time I talked to you on the telephone, I believe, or at least by email. What are you doing in Florida now?
Well, Mark lives down here, and he had come down. Mark had moved to Florida temporarily to help with hurricane repairs. He does construction work. He came down here temporarily. He liked it, and also he got cancer while he was down here.
Yeah, his best treatments were there, right?
Yeah, his treatments were here, and so he didn't want to leave, but he didn't want to move back to Middle Tennessee, so I eventually moved down here. I mean, I got a job too, by the way.
Oh, praise God!
Yeah, I didn't.
Congratulations.
Well, the thing is, I didn't have
it.
trouble getting any job. I didn't have trouble getting a job at all after I discovered that I was being sabotaged, and I learned to go behind the scenes to try to get one. There was no trouble. So.
What are you doing now?
I'm working in accounting department at a university here, doing accounting for a university.
For a university, probably best not to say the name. Not so that the government or whoever, the secret government, can't track you down. They know where we all are, but you don't need these fans tracking you down when you're at work.
Exactly.
I get that even in my job.
Right.
It's funny, people where I work and people know that I bartend in a restaurant here. I haven't hidden that information, and it's actually, the name of the restaurant is on one of my websites if you bounce around long enough. It's kind of a trip because people know me as just the bartender, in a sense. And every now and then someone will walk in from New Jersey or Australia and they'll want my autograph, and it kind of trips people out. Yeah. Or they'll have a copy of my book and they're like, what is this thing you do with UFOs?
Yeah.
All that.
I don't talk about this at work, not that I would mind, it's just that, we wouldn't be able to do our jobs.
Right, yeah, and for me, honestly, it's kind of an escape. It's like I don't have to be that person when I'm at work.
Right, exactly.
When people come, in fact, because the waiters, and it's a tourism town, it's Roswell, the waiters and waitresses know, that guy knows, when a tourist comes in and says, tell me about the UFOs, the average waiter waitress is like, they could care less, and they don't welcome the question. So they try to send them to me. My standard answer is, I'm not supposed to talk about this stuff too much at work. Here's my card. Because I would get distracted from being able to perform my job, and that's no fun at all.
Right.
I'd be fired. Can we say hi to Mark?
Okay, he's right here.
He's by your side.
Hello, this is Mark.
Hey, Mark. That's Mark with a C, Davenport, and Mark is also the author of a UFO-related book that deals with time travel. You can go to the bios for Leah and Mark on livefromroswell.com right now, and there's a direct link into Greenleaf Publications, which is the company they run together. Great to have you, Mark. I know we've only met or spoken once or twice.
Yeah, I think, was it in Roswell?
No, it was at a different convention.
Some other conference we were at. I remember meeting you.
Yeah, you two were working your table. I think Leah was a speaker there, and I may have had a vendor table at that one. Mm-hmm. Just for a second, for the heck of it, and to break things up, tell me about your book. Tell 700 or 800 people about your book, for that matter.
Oh, well, Visitors from Time, The Secret of the UFOs. I did a lot of research over a period of several decades, and came to the conclusion that some UFOs, the ones that we can't explain, are...
opposed to the ones we can't explain, thanks for clarifying that.
They are advanced technology. They are a craft that apparently contains a generator that generates a field around the craft that warps the structure of space-time, which allows them to travel not only through space, not only come here from other planets or even other galaxies perhaps, but also may allow them to travel through other parallel dimensions, travel through time in effect, and come here from God knows how many other places.
Wow.
And I came to this conclusion after years of study and trying to answer the questions of who are they and where are they from, and not having any more success than anybody else did. And so I used my techniques that I used as a manufacturing engineer to kind of turn the problem upside down and look at it from a different angle. And I started trying to answer the little questions, like how can they make hairpin turns at thousands of miles per hour without breaking up or burning up, and how they can change color and become invisible, and all those things that the witnesses were recording. And each one of those many questions could be answered by that same hypothesis, that they have the ability to create this field around them, an invisible field similar to a magnetic field.
Okay, and that book, the give us the book title again, and there is a direct link where people can get into all you and Leah's books.
It's called Visitors from Time, The Secret of the UFOs.
Oh, right on.
And it's in its 5th printing now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I did 3 printings on mine and just gave up on it because I'm, like we were talking with Leah, anybody who got into UFO stuff for the money got out a long time ago.
Well, yeah, that's true. We've lost gobs of money trying to educate
Yeah,
people.
she's spoken numbers with me before, and I'm not going to say it on the air either.
Yeah.
Let me have Leah back for a moment.
Okay.
I have a question for her.
I'm back.
Ooh, I'm scared of you. I'm just going to mention once again that Leah has done a complete lecture, and I'm not afraid to shameless self-promote as people who remember our first show with Josh. It is the key to getting out there. There's a lovely DVD cover on abductions, and Leah was one of the many lecturers we have on that single DVD. It's the ancientofdays.net, where Leah tells both her personal experience. She brought slides of her drawings and of things she's grabbed off the internet that really support her story. And as her bio says, she is considered one of the most credible of all abductees because she's gone through psychological testing, because she's very meticulously, in the way that only a CPA can, documented her experiences. But you can get both her books, I've got Amazon links to those, or you can go directly into their site so that they will make more money. And also her DVD lecture is available from ancientofdays.net on a name-your-own-price donations basis. Like I said, I'm not one of the people in this for the money either. Leah, is there anything you want to talk about? Well, we've got about 10 minutes or so.
Well, I'm a ghost, just, you know. You probably have a lot of people listening to you who have gone through these experiences, too, and they want to know what to do.
Correct. They actually requested you by name last week, and Stephen Bassett was the guest, so you can see how large a segue that was to get to you.
Okay, and I think you might have covered all of this in your first hour with James, and you touched on it briefly a little while ago. And
Yeah, go ahead.
I cannot overemphasize how important it is, if you're a target of mind control, to stay away from all the negativity that you possibly can. You know, it's important to eat right and keep your physical health up, get plenty of sleep. You know.
Now, is that just so you can feel good and at the top of your game while you're undergoing this experience, or is there any ways? The original question was if you want to take greater control and perhaps even end this experience.
The only way that I was able to end my experience was to keep on doing the research until I found out specifically the names of the people who had done the mind control on me.
That's right. You called them out, didn't you?
I did,
and survived to tell about it.
Well, I passed their names on to enough people so that some of the people with power have their eyes on these abductors now. My experiences didn't stop until I found out who was doing it. And I'm not going to name any names,
right,
but because that would just be a death warrant. But people who really want to know can do enough research to find it out themselves. Okay? So that's when mine stopped. But even after the experiences themselves stopped, I had so much residual damage from it that I still couldn't function very well. And that's why I'm saying it is so important. You can't a subject of mind control can't figure out what's going on with a foggy mind. And the only way I was able to figure it out was by doing every positive thing that I could think of to fight for clarity, to fight for a clear mind.
Oh, wow.
A person who's involved needs to just do everything right that they physically can so that they can think clearly. They need to get away from the house. You know, they need to get out and get fresh air. They need to have a proper diet, proper exercise, stay away from negative people, because it takes every ounce of energy and every bit of clear thinking that you can muster to be able to figure out what's happening and to fight it.
And James even mentioned spiritual warfare himself, and I know that's at least a part of your life as well.
Right. I think that the big picture is that it's spiritual warfare. That's the big picture. And
I know there's a lot of listeners who are going to criticize that element that you and I and James so freely talk about. Folks, we are not pretending that Jesus is a magic wand, okay? It's not just like carrying a crystal around and everything's better. It's that, I'm going to preach for a second. It is a big universe, and, you know, most of us, whatever our truest affiliation is, do believe in a big God. And he is real, and he's there for those who call on him to an extent. But like Leah's saying, there's a lot of obedience, in a sense. There's a lot of things you have to do to take care of you as well. It's not in the Bible that God helps those who help themselves, but I think it is a good principle. Would you agree or disagree, or want to cap me off on anything there?
No, I do agree with you on that, and I wrote a lot about this in Unlocking Alien Closets because I was figuring out that the only way I could help myself was to take care of myself. And like I said, that's when I started being able to think clearly enough to figure some of these things out.
Oh, that's amazing. Do you have any travel plans, any speaking engagements, you or Mark, that you would love to plug right now?
Mark is totally not speaking at all anymore since he came down with cancer, although he's doing better now. But he has retired from the field pretty much. And I'm just so busy with my job that I don't have time to speak anymore. However, we are both going to the conference in Eureka Springs, Arkansas in April.
Oh, just to hang out or to
just
make a table?
Just to hang out. I can't tell you how good it feels to go to a conference and not have to speak or do a radio show or something, but just...
Are you going to get a table?
We're getting a vendor's table there, and we're going to put our books there, and
maybe be at the table, maybe not.
And probably not be at the table. We're just going to chill.
You're just going to put a box there with a lock on, an honor box, huh?
Yeah.
That's,
we did that last year.
Yeah, tell me if I'm right. Is it OzarkUFO.com?
OzarkUFO.com. That is correct. It's a wonderful conference.
What are the dates of that conference?
April 13th through 15th.
Oh, wow. See, they run so close together. I've already committed to helping and being at AztecUFO.com. And just since we're friends, I'm going to plug them. Aztec UFO is held in Aztec, New Mexico, March 23rd through 25th. So, you remember Free and Amy, don't you?
I do.
They're great.
Yeah, they are. There's another one coming up end of February in Nevada.
Laughlin, that's the big one that I've been to.
Yeah.
And if all three of us, we usually travel as a team. If all three of us can get the time and we have the available funds, we go together now. I can't say for sure whether I will be in Ozark, but I can say for sure that it sounds like you will be. So, folks, if you want to meet this wonderful person and actually this wonderful couple that we have had on here, you need to go to Ozark UFO and get the dates and make your travel arrangements. Who's going to be speaking there? Do you know offhand?
Linda Moulton Howe usually speaks there. Rich Dolan is speaking there. We had Karen on 2 weeks ago. Oh, yeah, they are so much fun. Rich and Karen are just great. Arthur, you're making me want to go all the more. You know what? This may be a stupid but fun way to end. Karen gave us a really funny story of how her and Rich met. Do you have a really funny story or even an interesting one? How Mark and I met? We met at the Ozark UFO conference. So you go there to celebrate your anniversary, huh? That's where we met, sure enough. Yeah.
looking suave and debonair? Did you just throw a white handkerchief down when you walked by, or what?
No, it's so funny that we met in 1993. I was a speaker at the conference that year, and his book, Visitors from Time, had just come out, and he was sitting at a book table, and after my lecture, there were about 600 people who attended that year, and after my lecture, you know, people were coming up, just swarming me, wanting to ask more questions.
And I've seen that myself when you spoke here in Roswell. It's a fact.
Yeah, so
This lady impresses people.
I was trying, you know, I was starving. I was trying to make my way through the crowd to go get something to eat, and I heard this voice yelling from behind me, "Leah, Leah," and I turned around, and there was this guy sitting at the book table trying to get my attention, and so I walked over there, and he said, "I heard your lecture, and I heard you mention something about time travel. I just wrote a book about time travel." And so my first instinct was, "Oh yeah, okay, he's just trying to push a book on me." That was my first impression. But you know, it wasn't true really, though. But he had written a
Did he give you a copy right there?
He didn't give me a copy, but because he was selling them for the he didn't publish them himself. He was selling them for the publisher, and I just took his business card. I just blew it off and took his business card and said, "Well, I don't have my checkbook. You know, I'll think about it later." And I went home, and this was really weird. I went home.
90 seconds. We got like 90 seconds left.
Okay.
If your story takes us out, that will be a very happy ending.
Okay.
And even if it doesn't, we should hear some music by Michael Parker Band on our way out, and you can hear more of Mike's music just by clicking on the MySpace Featured Artist of the Week at livefromroswell.com. I will thank you folks for joining us. I will especially thank James and Leah for being on today. It was fantastic. No, you can hear lots of songs. If I were more famous and this show were bigger yet, we would have a lot more technical difficulties than we did, kind of like when David Sereda was on Art Bell. But I am so appreciative that we got this information talked about and will be available for audio archive by two fantastic and extremely knowledgeable people in this field. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, James. And Leah, I'm going to let you take us out.
Okay, I eventually was looking at my business cards and stuck on it, you know. I thought, maybe I should buy that book. And so I did buy it. I was
Leah,
intrigued by
we're done.
it. Oh, okay.
Folks, thanks for visiting. Come back.
Oh my God, was that rough. Testing. Yeah, Jojo, you need some work there, man. That was awful. So anyhow, I was able to get somewhat of a copy.
Going up from there to the 10 o'clock onto the 11 o'clock image, that's a particularly interesting image, the 11 o'clock image, because there appears to be a cube sitting on a rather flat surface, a cube of something. A cube that's dark and black, but bizarre.